Well, hey everybody, Mr. Reeves back with you. And in this video, we're going to be working through lesson 6.4 in the Math 7 HMH book, solving two-step equations. But before we do that, we're going to do a quick review of one-step equations. So in our previous lesson, we were solving one-step equations, and one-step equations could be addition and subtraction equations or multiplication and division equations. So let's go ahead and just remind ourselves of how to solve one step, because you need to know how to do one step in order to do two-step equations. All right, so remember, solving an equation is finding the value of the variable that makes the equation true. So in this equation, 25 equals q plus 20. We want to know, what do you add to 20 to get 25? And what we talked about was we're going to use something called inverse operations to isolate that variable to get that q by itself. Well, the inverse of adding is subtracting. So to solve this problem, I would subtract 20 from both sides. Those would cancel. And I would get 25 minus 20 is 5. And I would get q is equal to 5. And we could see that's true because 25 is equal to 5 plus 20. So 5 is the correct answer there. I can go ahead and put that in and check my answer. All right. Similarly, this one right here, I've got something plus 12 is equal to 30. I want to get that letter by itself. So I'm going to subtract 12 from each side. That's going to get the p isolated. And 30 take away 12 is going to give me 18. And again, if we checked our answer, 18 plus 12 is equal to 30. So again, an addition problem, we're going to solve by subtracting. 18 was the answer we got on that one. Hopefully this next one's a subtraction problem, and there it is. You see we have x minus 9 is equal to 1. I'm going to go ahead and add 9 to both sides using inverse operations. The inverse of subtracting is adding, and 1 plus 9 is 10. And you could see that 10 minus 9 does in fact equal 1, so 10 is our correct answer. All right, so again, when you have an equation with addition, you subtract to get the answer. When you have an equation with subtraction, you add. Here we go, 12 plus 9, 21. Similarly, when you have an equation with multiplication, you're going to divide, and when you have an equation with division, you're going to multiply, right? So right here we've got 2 times, whoa, where'd that come from? 2 times e is equal to 2. My goal is to get that e by itself. Remember, 2e means 2 times e. 2 is the coefficient. I divide both sides by 2, and I get e is equal to 1. Again, we can check our answer, and we can see 2 times 1 is equal to 2. So that is our correct answer. Right here, I've got d divided by 4 is equal to 9. I'm going to multiply because the inverse of dividing is multiplying. I'm going to multiply both sides by 4, and I get d is equal to 36. D is equal to 36. There we go. All right, this one right here, again, I have a division problem, right? G divided by 8. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 8. All right, and that's going to give me G is equal to 40, because when you do those inverse operations, whatever was with the variable will go away. It cancels out because they undo each other. And again, we could check our answer. 5 is equal to 40 divided by 8. Okay, so that's one-step equations. In an addition problem, you subtract. In a subtraction problem, you add. In a division problem, you multiply. And in a multiplication problem, you divide. Like this one, we would divide both sides by 3, and we would get 2. Okay? If you can do one-step equations, then two-step equations really aren't that bad. We just have to remember something, and that is order of operations. Okay? So for example, right here, they've got a picture of algebra tiles. For this equation, 3n plus 2 equals 11. All right, now remember, order of operations was do what's inside the parentheses first, right? And then exponents, and then multiplication and division from left to right, and then addition and subtraction from left to right. So if I have this expression 3n plus 2, and again that 3n means 3 times n, I would multiply by 3 and then add 2, right? So going this direction, what I would do would be multiply by 3, and then I would add 2. All right, so to solve that equation, I need to do the inverse operations. Well, what's the inverse of multiplying by 3? It's dividing by 3. And what is the inverse of adding 2? Well, that would be subtracting 2. But not only do you do the inverse operations, but you need to do them in the inverse order or the opposite order. Okay, so to solve this equation, 3n plus 2 equals 11, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take away 2, and that's what this represents right there. So this right here is subtracting 2 from each side. Do you see that? I have 2 on the right and 2 on the left. By the way, this was 3n plus 2 is equal to 11, so we're taking away 2 from each side. So if I were to represent that in this equation right here, that would be minus 2 and minus 2. Now those are then gone, right? Those are gone. And now what do I have? Now I have 3n is equal to 9. Remember what we said? We were going to subtract 2 and then we're going to divide by 3, right? So now 3n equals 9. When I divide both sides by 3, what do I get? All right. Well, if 3n is 3, you break it up into 3 equal parts, 1 part, 2 parts, 3 equal parts, and for each one of these, n equals 3. Do you see that? 1n is equal to 3. If 3n's equal 9, 1n equals 3, and there's our answer, and we could check it, right? We could go to that original equation. 3n plus 2 equals 11. We can multiply by 3. 3 times 3 plus 2 is 11. 9 plus 2 is 11. 11 is equal to 11. It works. It checks. Remember, solving an equation is finding the value of the variable that makes the equation true. Okay, so let's solve then some more two-step equations. All right, so I'm going to work on these ones down at the bottom of the page here. I'm going to give myself some space over here to work. So I'm going to do number 1 right here. I've got 2x plus 5 is equal to 11. Now again, according to PEMDAS, I would multiply and then add, right? But we're doing the opposite operations or the inverse operations in the opposite order. So what's the inverse of adding 5? Well, it's subtracting 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 5 from each side. That gives me 2x is equal to 6. Now, what's the inverse of multiplying by 2, dividing by 2? Because now we're at a one-step equation, right? It's 2 steps. Once you do 1 step, you got 1 step left. And what are we left with? We're left with x is equal to 3. And then, of course, we could check our answer. 2 times 3 plus 5 is equal to 11. 8 plus 5 is equal to, I'm sorry, 2 times 3 is not 8, Mr. Reeves. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 5 equals 11. I was looking at that going, no, 8 plus 5 is 13. I got the wrong answer. No, I just did my math a little bit wrong. All right, what about this next one, number 2 right here? 3n minus 1 is equal to 8. All right, again, going forwards, I would multiply first and then subtract. So going backwards, I'm going to do the opposite operations or the inverse operations in the opposite order. So I'm going to go ahead, and add 1 to each side. And when I do that, I'm going to get 3n is equal to 9. Looks familiar. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And what do I get when I divide both sides by 3? I get n is equal to 3. I guess that was supposed to be red and that was supposed to be blue. Not a big deal here. So let's go ahead and check our answer. 3 times 3 minus 1 is supposed to equal 8. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 minus 1 is 8. 8 equals 8. It checked. It was correct. All right, I'm going to skip number 3 and go to number 4. All right, negative 4y plus 2 is equal to negative 2. Again, I'm going to do the inverse operations in the opposite order. So going forwards, I would multiply by negative 4, and then I would add 2. So going backwards, I'm going to subtract 2 first. All right, the inverse of adding 2 is subtracting 2. All right, and when I do that, I get negative 4y is equal to negative 4, because again, I didn't show it, but those canceled there, right? Those canceled there, those canceled there. Every time your goal is to get that variable by itself. Now it just takes 2 steps. We're using the inverse operations in the opposite order. So now I'm going to divide by negative 4, right? Because the inverse of multiplying by negative 4 is dividing by negative 4. And when I do that, what do I get? I get y is equal to 1. And again, we can check our answer and get negative 4 times 1 plus 2. That's supposed to equal negative 2. Does negative 4 plus 2 equal negative 2? It sure does. Negative 2 equals negative 2. And we're good. All right, I do want to do one that has division. So let me go ahead here. How about this one right here, number 9? All right, if I were going forwards, I would divide and then add. So going backwards, I need to subtract and multiply. So my first step is going to be to subtract 9 from both sides. All right, and when I do that, I'm going to rewrite it over here instead of below it. I'm going to get k divided by 2 is equal to 21. Again, because those cancel, right? Okay, what's the inverse or the opposite of dividing by 2? It's multiplying by 2. Again, those cancel. I get k is equal to 42. And again, to check my answer, go back to my original equation, substitute my answer in for the variable. 42 divided by 2 plus 9 is supposed to equal 30. All right, well, 42 divided by 2 is 21. And 21 plus 9, guess what it equals? It equals 30. That proves our solution is correct because we found the variable, the value of the variable that makes the equation true. Okay, now I want to let you know in the future we're going to have some equations that may be more than 2 steps. All right, for example, number 13 and number 15, depending on how you do them, might be more than 2 steps, but we'll look at that in another video. All right, so solving 2-step equations, very similar to solving 1-step equations, in that we use the inverse operations. All right, if the equation added, you subtracted. If the equation subtracts, you add. If the equation multiplied, you divide. If the equation divided, you multiply. But now we have to do not only the inverse operations, but we have to do them in the correct order, which is the reverse of PEMDAS, the opposite operations in the opposite order. All right, I hope this video was helpful. Until next time, have a good day.